of 1,000 songs. And it goes right in my pocket.
Failure of the future has to be a nation that is agile, that is innovative, that is creative.
Welcome to Future², the podcast all about innovation in the enterprise, brought to you and run by Collective Campus, an innovation hub based in Australia that works with companies to help them adopt the mindset, methodologies and tools to successfully explore new business models and disruptive innovation in an era of rapid change. For more information, go to www.collectivecamp.us. And without further ado, here's today's podcast. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Future², the podcast all about innovation in the enterprise. Today we're lucky enough to be joined by Humphrey Laubscher, who is the Fintech Innovation Manager at National Australia Bank, also at their innovation laboratory, NAB Labs. So welcome, Humphrey.
Thanks. Really excited to be here. Excited to answer some questions, and great that you created a podcast to share with the startup community.
Fantastic. So you've obviously come from quite a decorated background in the lean startup space. Can you give us a bit of an overview as to what you were involved in before NAB Labs?
Yeah, sure. If you go way back, right in the beginning, I actually trained as a IT architect for Microsoft Services, where essentially we're automating deployments of desktop operating systems. And that was a passion I had in the very beginning. But then about 8 years ago, I sort of asked myself a question, why am I studying another Microsoft exam? Mm-hmm. And essentially the reason is because Bill Gates started a company and he needed people to install his software. So then I thought, well, I should start a company. How I actually started is I went out and just tried to learn as much as I could about starting a business, from sales to marketing to engineering. And this led me to going to so many events every week, just talking to people, trying to find mentors, understanding how does the digital business work, what your developers coding, how does sales work, everything. And then I actually ended up setting up Startup Digest for Melbourne. So I think we're up to about 1,400 subscribers, and we'll let them know what events were happening each week in Melbourne around those different themes, design, digital, code. Essentially I had this idea and I just started trying to build businesses myself. Yep. I also got involved in a lot of different incubation programs. One was called MEGA, Mobile Enterprise Growth Alliance. And what I realized was that when you work with a group of people on an idea, you can become very insular. You can believe what people say. You can become very excited about this new technology or app or program, and you think you're going to change the world until you go talk to your customers. Mm-hmm. So one of my first experiences was a physio rehab app, because I dislocated my shoulder. So it's my own pain, literally my own pain. But I'd gone to the physio rehab clinic and said, how about an app that would just give you reminders about your different exercises, log in, track them, etc., and help you recover quicker, monitoring. I said, it's a great idea, So they said, what do you want? I said, well, I just want to talk to your customers. So I started interviewing customers and understood there were a number of complexities. So this was before the App Store, before iPhone really being launched. So we're talking about Symbian OS and Nokia's, etc. But what I realized was that practice had 4 different practice management solutions across their own. So there was one business nationally, but they all had 4 different practice management solutions. They had paper-based solutions, they had online, they had various digital components. None of the practices actually had computers in the practice. So how is a physio going to actually record anything? How are you going to receive the payment? The practice didn't want to pay for it, but how the customer is going to pay you $1 a week? There was no actual. So this initial lesson of becoming so enthused and getting so much advice about this is a great idea, it's amazing, led to reality, which was great, because that's what you want. You want to understand what are the realistic obstacles that you're up against, and you're always up against obstacles. So talking to customers, this first experience, I learned a lot, and then this is where, long story short, I learned about Steve Blank and the 4 steps to epiphany. And I just loved his approach of, engaging with the market. This was a guy who did the first A/B testing. Yep. He would put up physical boxes in computer stores in the US to see which ones customers would go for. This was a traditional A/B test. So that led me to Steve Blank. One of his students was Eric Ries, more of a development mindset than marketing, but he wrote The Lean Startup, and
one thing led to another.
Exactly.
Yep. So you worked for, I suppose, a lineup of different sort of organizations in this space. from Pollenizer,
Yes.
Institute.
True. So maybe I didn't fully answer the question. I had this idea to do a business.
Mm-hmm.
I tried a number of businesses on my own, on weekends and evenings. I highly recommend that for people. If you're not willing to commit over the weekends in your spare time, then don't quit your day job.
Yeah.
Because what are you going to do with all that extra time? You're not going to have any money. But then I looked for what is the next opportunity I can go to really shift from IT infrastructure consulting to digital. And so I did actually quit my job. I worked on a digital app, mobile loyalty. Didn't work out. I fell in love with NFC about 6 years ago, which was a terrible idea. Another lesson: don't fall in love with the technology. So I joined Mick and Phil at Pollenizer in Sydney. So I moved to Sydney. They were working on sort of new startup ideas every sort of 3 months. Specifically, I became a product manager of a product called WooBoard, which was an employee engagement tool. So within a business, I would send you a woo for doing a good job or for getting me a coffee. Yeah. And essentially at the end of the month, you would have a woo board and you would have a winner and a loser. Or not a loser, but you would just be able to see who really engaged with whom. And when I joined, what had happened is we had a huge spike of acquisition because we're really good at marketing, but then there was no engagement. So if you think of the classic acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue, they didn't occur. We had the acquisition, we could buy in-stores, right? That's great. We had the activation, they were putting the email sign up, but we had no retention. Just slammed bottom, which is great because you sort of, I wasn't there in this euphoric period of, these sign-ups are really cool, it's all awesome. I was there we've got to have a hard look at this. So my role there was as a product manager. You have a small team, a couple of devs, design, CEO as well, but that product manager role is everything: your sales, your marketing, your leading prioritization backlogs, running scrums, etc. And one of the first things I did, surprise, go talk to customers, talk to both who left and who stayed. And one of the biggest things I realized was that customers who were still with us were doing things outside of the platform to stay engaged. So one of the things they did is they would have a reward at the end of each month. They'd give someone a bottle of wine or a chocolate. They'd give them a certificate. Everyone knew what they were working towards. And what I realized from those that didn't stay is that they didn't have someone who owned it, who did this for them. So my role was to essentially take that feedback and put it into the product. So what we did is instead of the first person signing up, not knowing what to do, the first person signed up became the owner, and they had to set a date and a reward. They didn't have to have it right now, which is great, but you could. But the great thing about having a date is it meant everyone that they invited now knew why they won it. They knew that, hey, there's an end date, there's a reward, there's a competition. I should engage. And that single communication factor really helped us improve retention and engagement, etc. Unfortunately, at the time when I joined, a lot of the Pollenizer model in building was getting these tranche payments of every 3 months going back to investors. And unfortunately, in startups, I'm a believer that you can learn something over 3 months, but not enough to test the business. I think it really takes between 12 to 18 months to really test a product or service. You need acquisition channels, opportunities, client interaction, especially when you're a small team, you don't have a lot of resources. So, and by the time I joined, they'd really been operating for about 2-3 years, but then a lot of the different experiment models weren't really quite working, and investors weren't willing to keep topping up, really. So the team actually, Pollenizer shut down a lot of the experiments and ended up more working out in corporate innovation. So they work a lot in the Philippines. They set up Telstra Meridi, or Mick did at least. Phil does a lot in the Philippines, and they're doing a lot of sort of corporate training now. But it was a great lesson to learn of, being owning a particular product, interacting with customers, understanding what you need to build within the product. And I think we took the product to a great place because we also started looking at things like adding values to woos, so you can actually get this digital pulse. And we also had this great concept is that, well, if you're sending all these rewards and incentives and messages, by the end of the month or quarter, you can actually build a report for each individual person and see who have they interacted most with, what have they achieved. So it becomes like a KPI report for small businesses. And I think in the end, it's recently got acquired just about a year ago. So I think they got the exit they wanted. But yeah, so Pollenizer was a great learning experience. Spent some time with Optus Innovate Seed, which is a corporate venture capitalist. And that was a really interesting experience because Optus Innovate Seed was actually a sort of a smaller entity. It wasn't a traditional venture capitalist, and we had a bigger parent in Singapore. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics between how the Southeast Asian market is growing for entrepreneurship, but it's actually behind Australia and the Western world, I'll put it, in terms of the mentor networks, the angel networks, etc. So a lot of difficulty there was more around the expectation of a founder in Thailand only wanting 20k a year, while one in Australia needing 50 to 60. And the values there, and the amount of money we could invest was only about 200 to 50k. Traditional VC and head office were pretty millions. So there's a lot of lessons there in terms of discrepancy, but again, I learned a lot in terms of the local community engagement. Spent some time in product strategy with LexisNexis, which is an international legal law firm. We were working on a new product that was looking at how can we add more value to lawyers. So LexisNexis sells essentially the written word in the courts in books and DVDs. Essentially what it does. Every single word said in the courts is recorded, but you need to add more value. You can't just sell a book or sell a CD-ROM. You need to add more value. So we're looking at practice management solutions. So I was engaging with law firms to understand their pain problems. And then in the end, we came up with a product and solution that was more, that was interesting because we had both Southeast Asia, we had EMEA, and we had North America, all different digital strategies. So it became more of a alignment of goals and objectives and budgets, etc. Again, another lesson in corporate innovation in terms of how do you get the money, how do they see the spending of that money, because we had it was really the place where I learned that startups have an advantage over corporates. Right now, if I'm a startup and I want to start a business tomorrow, I can accept the dollar, literally. I can integrate Stripe, I can get an account, PayPal, I can go for life. At LexisNexis, it would cost us $350,000 in 6 months to add one new line item into the financial management system. So I'll just say for startups, if you don't think you have an advantage, you can move faster than corporates. Too slow. And then, so at that time, my wife got pregnant with Chloe, so we decided to move back to Melbourne. Spent some time with Loud and Clear, sitting at the digital incubator. So that was non-technical entrepreneurs. Loud and Clear is a full development resource, and helping them bring their ideas to fruition. And then that led me to NAB, where they were building out NAB Labs as an innovation group. It just got approved by the board to be set up, and managed to join the team there as a conduit for startups into NAB Labs.
Fantastic. Well, clearly been a very busy man on the innovation front, having discovered the whole customer discovery and customer development approach several years ago. One of the things I suppose that struck me there was don't fall in love with technology, and I think that's something that we're seeing large organizations confused with. Innovation is this need to be digital, this need to get the latest technology, but not really paying enough attention to what is the value proposition, what problems are we solving. You mentioned the physio pain point that you personally had, which is oftentimes the reason why startup founders start a particular business, because they experience a particular pain point or they want to create a particular gain. So that's quite interesting, I suppose, segue into NAB Labs. So you're the Fintech Innovation Manager there. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your role with NAB Labs, and I suppose about NAB Labs itself, perhaps first and foremost?
Yeah, sure. So NAB Labs was started roughly just over a year ago. Essentially, it was designed as a group to help the bank overall become more innovative over a 5-year horizon. Part of that also looks at how do we actually upskill some of the staff within the bank in terms of agile innovation practices, human centered design, etc. As current iteration, NAB Labs has a process whereby we look at opportunities with strategic partners, startups, internals. We have a Shark Tank where that opportunity is then pitched over 3 minutes, 1 minute on problem, solution, and market size. We would then select, between 5 and 8 of these opportunities to run what we call an experiment. An experiment could either be anything from 2 weeks to 12 weeks. The objective of an experiment is divided into 2 phases. 1, confirm the actual problem. So even though you may pitch a problem, that is just your best guess of what the problem is. So we spend the first half of the experiment just testing with customers the problem, and we use the IDEO double diamond methodology, which essentially means when you start with a problem, in the very beginning you start very broad. You interview your customers about their entire life, around that problem set, obviously. And then as you get into the interviews, you gain insights those insights bring you back to a decision point where you feel that you confidently understand this problem. You then have the second diamond, which is around the solution. So now, what are actual potential solutions we have to solve this? At this point, this is when we could again engage with startups, strategic partners that we have, or build it ourselves, depending on the complexity. And again, the second phase would be going really broad, looking at all types of potential solutions. Could be paper-based, could be digital, could be carrot vision, whatever it might be. And then again, getting insights, build, test, measure, learn, doing prototypes, wireframes, etc. with customers. So again, constantly over the whole period, we're interviewing customers every week, 12 to 15. So that in the end outcome, we will have a clickable demo, a clickable prototype. We looked at integration, white labeling, all of those kind of things that we could present at the end and say, hey, this is actually the potential, this is where we see it go. One of the funny things is because visual design looks so good, people expect it's all done. So sometimes when you go into commercialization, you show them an update, and it's like, oh, that's exactly what you showed me 6 months ago. It's like, well, actually, we're building all the stuff behind it to actually get it to work,
Exactly.
And so it's interesting in terms of expectation control. But yeah, so essentially we have, an experiment process. We run about, like I said, 5 to 8 experiments. Each of those are sourced teams. Those teams, again, come between 4 to 8 people in them, developer, designer, scrum master, BA, human-centered design lead. And also for every experiment we have someone from the business. So we want to make sure that someone from the business cares about the problem. Otherwise, when it comes to commercialization, you're not going to have the support there. So we make sure we have that before we actually pitch. And then, so at the end of that sort of experiment process, we tend to have 1 or 2 out of every 8 that we'll commercialize every quarter. And then that goes through a different group called Express Delivery, still within NAB Labs, where we would then look at how do we actually bring that into the bank. So that can be, pilots and commercial rollout, etc., which could take anything from, 6 to 18 months, depending on the complexity. And then we have a newly formed NAB Ventures group that was announced last June. We're in the process of setting that up, and so the opportunity there is that NAB Ventures will invest 50 mil in 3 years in startups.
Fintech startups, or?
Well, look, essentially, again, if you look at the NAB Labs process, it's about solving our customers' problems, or potentially our customers are also internal staff. So we look at solutions that can solve those problems. So if there is a startup that we've worked with that can solve a particular problem pain point, and they happen to be doing a capital raise, and if you create a deeper relationship with them, either strategically or such, then we'd look at those opportunities at that point as well. So I don't like the word fintech particularly.
Even though your role's Fintech Innovation Manager?
Unfortunately, it's more like an SEO search thing, I think. But yeah, if someone decides something is fintech, it isn't. But generally, it helps our customers as well.
Yeah. Excellent. And I guess on corporate startup partnerships, this is a topic I've written about in the past. Generally, large organizations, obviously, we were talking about this earlier with LexisNexis, the startup costs can be $300,000 plus, whereas for a traditional startup, it's $1, it's an Amazon Web Services account, the barriers to entry have never been lower. And so when you get this, I suppose the freedom of movement that startups have to just go out, move fast, break things, the whole Facebook mantra, but you combine that with the resources, the expertise, the networks of a large organization, it sounds like a pretty compelling sort of marriage. What are your thoughts on the corporate startup partnership? And obviously it sounds as if NAB does value this, given startups make up part of that strategic partner network, and NAB Ventures has just been set up. But just any thoughts on NAB, or just what you've observed in the marketplace in terms of startups and corporates working together?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things about NAB Labs is we call them experiments. We don't say we're building startups, because our objective isn't to build a brand new digital product and then have to own that and put teams to it and costs. So really, what I like to say is the objective of NAB Labs is to partner with startups and become a customer of startups, or strategic partners as well. So essentially, we want to work with people that are already motivated and the best in the world at solving that problem. We're just trying to make that connection a bit easier and look at different integrations. So going back to your question of this startup model and the complexities there, I think we've also learned over the last year of we've looked at how do we actually commercialize better and quicker. And part of that concept is how do we do things outside of the bank, prove the value outside of the bank, either NAB branded or maybe not NAB branded, and then show that value and then bring it into the bank. Because what tends to happen is you could do an experiment, people get really, really excited, and then all of a sudden you go into business case side and that goes into the millions. You're like, whoa, have we actually validated enough of this opportunity? Because if you understand, lean start methodology, you got the first phase is problem solution fit, and then the next big phase is product market fit. We do problem solution fit in NAB Labs. The public commercialization process to look at product solution fit or product market fit. It's making sure that you don't get confused. You can get really excited looking at a great UI and experience, but then they go, wow, it's going to blow customers away, but we haven't tested customer acquisition channels, cost channels, engagements, etc. So I think for us, we're definitely looking at opportunities where we can do more things. Obviously having an understanding of the bank's systems, platforms, processes, authentication methods, etc. Because you need to understand that for financial viability of something. But really things that we can experiment outside, and I think you'll see things being released by NAB that show that in the coming months.
And you touched briefly there on NAB branded versus non-NAB branded. It's a question we often get here at Collective Campus. If we're experimenting, we put something out with our name on it, and the quality isn't that great because it's purely an experiment. Isn't that going to reflect poorly on our brand? If you do release something NAB branded, how do you manage that reputational risk?
Yeah, I can't say too much about it right now because we are looking at ways that we can do things. Either NAB or some brand or other, but we haven't actually released that yet. In terms of the complexity, the added complexity in releasing something as NAB, exactly right. We have a huge number of customers. They would associate performance, support, stability to that. So if we make a decision again to go NAB or one of our other brands like Ubank, you need to have a certain level of comfort, and that means cost. So again, it comes down to that product market fit discussion. Have you validated enough of the value and benefit to say, I want to pump in this extra cash to go down this channel? If you look at sub brands or non-NAB branded opportunities, we still haven't yet to test something fully non-NAB branded, but I think we're getting comfortable with that. But also, other people, at the end of it, you want to attract early adopters, right? So, I don't know if you've seen Barclays have recently launched Launchpad, which is targeting a specific segment of the customer base. I think that's a great idea. It's, they're early adopters, engagers, you're giving them a value proposition, knowing that, hey, this may not be the most stable product in the world, but you can test and feature features that haven't been released yet, and people like that. And that audience that engages with that, I think it can provide incredibly valuable feedback. Often say the same thing, 40,000 people on the test list, so I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. I think Intuit Labs as well, one of the pioneers of releasing branded products, but purely for the purposes of early stage customer testing. They make it very clear that that's what the purpose is, and they usually release it for free. So I think as long as there's transparency, and obviously not too much exposure on the financial front or privacy front, then probably sounds like the better way to approach those types of things. And I guess there is a bit of a catch-22 there, because if you release something non-NAB branded, without the trust and the reputation of the brand, it may be harder to get those early adopters on board.
Well, actually, on that, I think that's better.
Okay.
I think sometimes a brand can artificially inflate that acquisition and that opportunity that you wouldn't have had as a non-large brand entity. So if you really want to test the true value of an opportunity, market it as a brand you start with that has no trust, has no viability, and then you'll really see how the market reacts to it. Because if it's solving such a big, massive pain, it doesn't matter whether you're IBM or whether you're a little no-name brand startup. If you're solving a big enough problem, people will engage with it. So it gives more mature, clear message. But I think a brand can, while adding a lot of value and trust to maybe a product market fit solution, can also obscure early numbers or results. And so say, for example, if you release something branded, you can get 100,000 sign-ups, but only 5,000 people actually engage. That's success or failure. But to be honest, out of those 100, only 5,000 were your target demographic of early adopters for that product or service. Because, in the adoption lifecycle of a product, Clayton Christensen, You want those early adopters. You don't want the early majority or the late majority. Very different segments. So yeah, I think there's a lot of value in releasing things off frame. But and I was just going to add that the classic example is Google, right? Google beta, Gmail beta, freaking everything's beta. Why is it beta? Because they can respond going, it's only a beta product. I think Gmail was beta for a decade.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly, but only recently, I think a couple years ago, took the beta tag off it. So.
Yeah. And just on that, the technology adoption curve, Kevin Christensen, Jeffrey Moore also wrote about it.
Sorry, Jeffrey Moore.
Pioneer in crossing the chasm.
Yes.
And, basically stipulates that 2.5% of your eventual market is basically made up of technologists and innovators who are basically just willing to give anything a go, really, regardless of whether or not it's solving any major pains of theirs.
Actually, I'll challenge it. I think it still solve the pain, but they just don't care about who's solving the pain.
Yeah.
So they love the technology more than the fact that you're not IBM.
Sure.
I think that's
the differentiation.
Yeah.
Sure. And so on that, you mentioned earlier that one of your criteria with the Shark Tank pitches was market size. How do you, and I fully appreciate why, particularly coming from a large organization, but how do you balance, the technology adoption curve and the fact that very early on the market may be very small or unknown, with wanting to invest in, to quote Clayton Christensen, disruptive innovation?
Yeah. I think that market size is trying to, you could say the market size in terms of the customers that would use it or how many customers are affected by this problem. So for us, it's just more an indicator going, okay, if we're going to need to work on a set number of experiments every quarter, and it's a cycle process, we just need some sort of add value. So if there's something that's affecting 100,000 customers within that potential to affect compared to 20, we're going to put efforts and time and resources into the big opportunity. So it's not really about how big could this product get, because at that stage you're just pitching the problem, right? We're just saying how many people are actually affected by this problem. So it gives us some sort of size estimate. But a lot of them don't have specific numbers. And I think there was a bubble in Incumbents in zero, and when they were looking at the market size of small businesses in New Zealand, I think it was quoted as 400,000, but he realised they were just doing surveys and it's actually a market of 650,000. So it's a bit funny, but
Excellent. So the last time we caught up, Humphrey, you mentioned something called innovation for the bank.
Yes.
There's a lot of talk about all sorts of crazy startups out there building super disruptive innovations, apps, platforms, whatever it is. And there is, I suppose, misconception in the market that banks with their internal innovation labs are also building all sorts of crazy startups. What did you mean when you said innovation for the bank?
Yeah. So this is a comment that when I first joined NAB, there would be certain opportunities coming up, and we would be debating whether it's innovative. And so for me, being in the startup space, and like you see stuff all the time. You would go, that is not innovative. It's been around for like 18 months. Oh no, but it's innovation for the bank. So it was interesting. So what we've now done is we've segmented ideas or concepts into a couple of different opportunities. Is this innovative for the entire industry? Like, has this never happened in financial services before? Is it innovative, I guess, within maybe the Australian market? So industry worldwide, Australian market. Is it innovative just between the big four banks, or is it just innovative for NAB? Say, for example. So we've sort of been a bit more realistic in terms of, okay, let's just classify this type of innovation because there's so many opportunities to look at. Some that are really disruptive and some that we are, catching up in some areas. So, it's just a classification technique, I guess, now.
Excellent. And one point I wanted to touch on today was around acquisitions or, internal innovation. For example, where you have run these experiments, you've gone through some sort of commercialization, product market fit experiments as well, to validate that, yes, we've got enough people who are willing to pay for this product. You've perhaps run these experiments in the cloud, the costs have been quite low, but then the mothership says, okay, experiment concluded, we've got something here we're taking to market, we now need to bring it onto our core infrastructure, our legacy systems, and therefore the cost skyrockets. Is this a challenge you've faced at NAB Labs, or something you can talk to just in general?
At the moment, within NAB, we have a lot of digital initiatives on the go. We have a lot of funding investing going into the area. So there's a lot of change happening. So right now we're quite a complex environment that's going to be simplified over the next 12 to 18 months by the digital team and others. So right now, one of the biggest issues is regression testing across different platforms and services. The costs are really quite high. In terms of integration into the bank, it really depends on the product or service. So there could be product and services that, you as a startup, you're a vendor, we're paying you for a service. We may do certain testings, integration testing, or penetration testing of the service. Once that's approved, we may not need any more deep integration. If it is, then we might just be within internet banking. So it really depends, and it changes. Cost changes between mobile and web, etc. What systems it touches. So it's quite a complex question. But what we would do is we would look at commercial viability of something before we do a pilot or look at that first phase of commerciality. So if we realise to really get value here, it would mean complete integration across all of internet banking, all of our mobile apps, everything. That could really hurt the viability of an initiative. But if there is something that's cloud hosted and we do penetration testing on it, and our security guys were happy with it, and we've got API integration or just authentication connection or something else, there's no reason why it couldn't stay like that. We've got an internal platform as well that we've developed for our bankers as well. So we're building that up, and it's kind of its own app store type scenario. That's so we can build widgets into actions and bring more value to them as well. But again, that's just data, right? So as long as you have a connection to the data, you can represent that data, and that's something we will build. But it's low touch.
And I think that's a much more aggressive view to take. We have come across companies where IT basically operates under this sort of blanket rule where anything we develop needs to be plugged into our core infrastructure. It doesn't matter if it can sit on the cloud, doesn't matter if there's security concerns with it. And I think that's probably more of a cultural problem. There is one such company we've dealt with, an insurer, who spent literally less than $50,000 testing a product, found some validation. Two problems. One, they wanted to integrate it onto the mothership too quickly. You mentioned earlier, the learnings can take place over not just a 3-month accelerator, but up to 12 to 18 months. So I think one, as soon as there was some early validation, said, okay, let's use this as an example of us being innovative and kicking goals. But two, they insisted on bringing it on board their legacy infrastructure, which meant the cost went from $50,000 up to $500,000. Which not only did the costs skyrocket, but putting it onto that infrastructure then meant it slowed down the pace at which that new venture could operate. So definitely looking at things on a case-by-case basis. Does it meet our privacy obligations? Does it meet our security requirements? Is there any benefit from integrating it, or is it fine on its own two legs, in the cloud? And if you can answer yes to all those questions, then why insist on integration?
Exactly. I think, in that case, what you could have asked, the other question you'd ask is, what could you have done with that 500K if you had just kept experimenting? How even if you took 250 of that, how much more of a proof point would you have learned in terms of the adoption, the engagement, the referral, and then you could have focused on that next 500K on the parts that really mattered. But you're exactly right. I think people get way too excited without giving it enough time to actually understand the core metrics of an opportunity, and putting that actual fuel on something that you don't quite understand just takes it in a whole other direction and can totally derail it. So it's definitely something that we're looking at internally as well. And I think a lot of corporates, I think out of no malice, just excitement. It is so energetic, and finally, everyone's doing something that's cool and innovative, and they just want to get it out there. But then, at the end of the day, everyone's going to be judged on something, right? You're judged on how much you spent, how much ROI you got, to either make money, retain customers, or get a new product out there, etc. So, I think that excitement needs to be tempered, and you need to give it more time. But you're right, it's funny. Generally, within corporates, it takes so long to take things to the market, but yet they don't want to apply the same patience to seeing whether something actually works or not. And they'll take any little bit just because they know it will take so long. But then if it doesn't work and you go through that invaluable fuel, you've lost more money, you've burned your brand, and affected everyone in the business.
Yeah, and essentially that kind of goes against the very purpose of your lean startup methodology, which is about true efficiency. It's about testing or taking lots of small bets. And when you put on, I suppose, that traditional corporate lens and say, okay, we've got some validation here, let's take one big bet, kind of renders the whole process somewhat redundant. Absolutely. Yeah, and you touched on something there as well, which I think was quite interesting around, what else could we have done with the $450,000 that went into integration. Kind of reminds me of an argument that people make to try and get buy-in from senior executives and the like. Yes, it's hard to justify up front how much money you will make, but if you were to take, say, other projects that have failed in the organization, which cost upwards of millions of dollars, and say, well, if we had applied this methodology on these project X, Y, and Z, we would have discovered that, hey, we haven't got product market fit much earlier in the process, and therefore we have saved so much money. So keen to find out from yourself what sort of strategies you've kind of applied, I suppose, to get that buy-in from corporate or from senior executives.
Well, look, I was very lucky. A lot of that work happened before I joined. Yeah. So, NAB Labs had been running as an experiment itself. Yeah. So it ran one wave, pre-funding. Had a little transfer cash to do, and the exact reason why we ran that was because the new CEO, Andy Thorburn, had identified the value in having a team tasked with that. And exactly to your point, looking at the traditional business case process and understanding that we just weren't innovating quick enough. Why was that? So we had that support to have a customer-centered focus. The bank traditionally, like I think anyone in corporates, believed they were the holder of all knowledge. Our customers don't know what they want. We know. We're the bankers, So, and it's not just bankers, it's any industry. You believe since you're working, you know everything about it. And so you're working your own ideas. You would sell in product, or you'd be sold product or service over a dinner table at a fancy restaurant and then force it onto users. But now, the whole of NAB is changing its mindset because of Andrew, of being customer focused. One of the biggest indicators of that is he's led the NPS reform within NAB. So every single business unit and group is aligned to NPS. It's the number one thing we look at. The NPS isn't improving. And what is NPS? It's the net promoter score for how the customer deals with or refer you or not. So that's the ultimate, metric to be tracking. So the fact that we now start with our customer in mind and the problem that they have rather than the solution is testament to our process. And it's exactly that, to reduce it. But I think we're still learning. We've only been a year, so like I said, I think we've learned a lot about reducing the wastage on that problem solution fit, but we need to expand a bit more now on the product market fit.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing similar things across different industries, not just banking, but I suppose legal services, accountancy, where there is, and consulting as well, where there is this perception that, hey, we have all the answers, our customers don't know. And industries like that generally don't play well with others, which doesn't really lend itself to bringing in, insights from outside the building. Because I think one of the sort of core fundamentals of innovation is connecting the dots between lots of seemingly unrelated things. But if everyone's making decisions about new product development, looking at the world through a very similar lens, everyone's cut from the same cloth, then to your point earlier about diverging and converging, when it comes to the problem, you've got to think about lots of different problems and potentially sketch and prototype lots of different solutions. If you've got 10 people on the team and all see the world the same way, chances are you're not going to really come up with too much.
It was actually funny, I recently did a quick segment on Koshi's Business Builders, because NAB is one of the sponsors of the program, and we turned to Georgia BD of BD Wines, which has a single serve glass of wine packaging. And I shared with her, similar to what I'm going to share now, is that concept of the black swan moment. I actually looked up the definition after I already said it, just to make sure I was right. The black swan moment more refers to a strategic change of direction or opportunity. But in terms of the books that I read, that I can't recall the name right now, it was more about the fact that there was an industry around taking messages of core service. So it's a commoditized business industry. just terrible industry, terrible business, no growth, just competitors were ruthless, and all you're doing is taking messages, no innovation, nothing. What he identified is that he actually spoke to 100 customers. 99 of the customers also did the exact same thing. They said, "Oh no, I just want you to take my messages." That there was no innovation, there was no addition, etc. Except that hundreds of customers they spoke to said, "Well, if you could actually make a booking as well, that'd be amazing."
Yeah.
So it's this opportunity where you may talk to a lot of customers, they may all tell you the same thing in different ways, but if you stop talking to them and engaging, you will not understand their breadth of pain, and there'll be that those customers that then make that jump, make that leap for you, which could lead to a new product, a new opportunity, a new business line, etc. And that change for that business really, gave them leaps and in terms of the industry, in terms of offering product, and just growth and growth and growth. So, the consistency of talking to customers and engaging them is so important. And often people say, what about Steve Jobs in terms of, he would say, and Henry Ford, if you ask customers, they want to build a faster horse or, go to the customers. But to be honest, I think with Steve Jobs, what he did is he never, released products for the very first time in the market. So he was never the first one to release the touchscreen.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. When the iPod came out, there were previous products in the market which essentially served as analogs or validators for the product. When you think of the Sony Walkman, which was a validator for mobile music players. You think of the early incarnations of MP3 players, which validated that people were willing to download music from the internet and download them onto their phones. So really it was an evolution as opposed to a revolution as such.
He was never the first one to release, an iPod player, an MP3 player. He was never the first one to release this into market on an untested market. He had always had validation, right? There was always some other product before, but what he did so well is he looked at the entire experience. There's a phenomenal blog on Quora where a person outlined why Touch ID worked for Apple and why it didn't work 3 or 4 years earlier by HTC. Yeah. And essentially the core components came down to is that HTC sort of believe it was in, put it at the back, or something swipe that just bought the component from someone else and added into the Windows mobile app. It was slow, it was unresponsive. What did Apple do? They bought a company. Like they said we're going to do it. They looked at the whole experience. They didn't say it's going to be an extra button. They integrated into the major button they had. Yeah. If you just look at the experience. So I think what Steve Jobs did really well is he sort of applied that customer experience lens. And they did huge amounts of prototypes. Yeah, they're not going to customers in that scale, but they do testing. I mean, if you look at anything Johnny Ive does in terms of their testing engagements, and a number of times in his books, they'll go through prototypes and iterations, and so I think it's very different. I think you have to engage customers. I think what's important is you shouldn't let them lead where you go. Like you shouldn't listen to every single customer, and if one customer says you build it, you need to know who are the customers you're targeting. And be willing to say no to customers. So if you have 100 customers and you get an 80-20 rule, 20% of bringing in 80% of the revenue. Those are the people you listen to. Yeah. And you understand how you double down on that.
Yeah, I guess you need to be conscientious in terms of what kind of questions you're asking customers. Open-ended questions and probing, asking why. So many times to get to the root cause of why they're feeling a certain way. Otherwise, you end up in focus group territory where you have people who generally are paid to be there, and unless you're actually, trying to test some key assumptions underlying your business model by getting them to give you $1, a lot of the metrics and findings that come out of those focus groups can be flawed and, like I said, guide companies in the wrong direction.
So to add to that, you can lead a customer in so many different ways. Yeah. There's a brilliant but sad documentary Making a Murderer on this. And the core component of that is these interrogators that actually lead this sub-intelligence child down into telling them exactly what he wants. Now, obviously not to the degree, but if you're interviewing a customer, you can give them as many leading questions as you want to tell them exactly what you want. I remember when I was in one of my startups, I would reach out to people through LinkedIn or Twitter or email, whatever it might be, and say, I'd love to interview you about this problem you're having. And I wouldn't tell them about the product. And a couple would get so frustrated with me and say, no, I'm not going to meet with you. I was like, fine. because I didn't want to influence him. It's almost like seeing someone in their natural habitat. You don't want to, you don't want to influence them. You don't want to, change their mindsets or give them anything. You just want to see them in their natural habitat and how they work and what their pains are and what they do. And all the questions that you want to ask them are all about what they currently do. How do you interact with? What do you do? And you want to then just flow and sort of become this private investigator and understand their life. And only at the very, very end. That might even be the first interview. If you keep coming back with different interviews, you then want to show them something and go, okay. Because what you're really trying to do in the beginning is a couple of things. You want to prioritize your top 3 pains and top 3 solutions and correlate the order that you put those in with your customers. So when you do the business model canvas, the lean canvas, you're saying, well, what is your number 1 pain, number 2 pain, number 3 pain? That is your best guess. That is your hypothesis. When you go talk to customers, you might realize number 1 pain, they didn't even care about it. Number 2 was, number 3 was the big one. Then you've got to keep iterating, because once you realize what your customer's number 1 pain is, number 1 solution, that becomes a unique value proposition. So when you have that one sentence look at your customer, who are you? I'm Humphrey. I've got a business that solves problem number 1 using solution number 1. Are you interested? Yes, that's my problem. So, I couldn't stress that enough about not leading the customer.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with questions like that, problem number 1, problem number 2, even asking questions like, well, have we missed anything? Or if you had a magic wand, the product would appear that did X, Y, Z. Which I think is much more powerful than just asking a yes/no question, which is going to lead the customer to say, oh, yeah, sure, there's no money being exchanged. Yeah, sure, I'd use that product for that, shot bananas from the sky. Why not?
Well, you can even do the, if you want the dollar, you can do the commitment letter as well. Like, great, sounds like you're really interested. Do you mind if we just sign this contract?
Exactly.
And standing at this date, you'll pay $50 a month. And it's amazing. Like, it's even fictitious. Then to sign it, they're like, I don't know.
Exactly.
You get a good feedback. And something else you said, I love the Magic Wand. I think the Magic Wand is a great one. And there was another one you just mentioned.
There's another one around workarounds as well. If you've got a particular problem, how do you currently go about solving it? I love that question. I recently ran a workshop on Lean Startup, and we had someone come in, no previous experience with entrepreneurship, but this guy was in the health space. He was an optometrist. And apparently with imaging devices, most of them don't talk to each other. And so in order to get an image from one device and put it into the other, you've got to manually download it. So I was asking about this workaround, and I said, well, if you could create a solution, or if you had a magic wand, would you have a product that automated the whole thing? Definitely,
I know startups actually doing that.
Yeah, well, there you go. There you go. But he came in and he was like, I have absolutely no idea what I want to work on. And we just went through that question and answer process. Literally within 5 minutes, we'd landed on something which I found quite compelling, and I was wondering, why the hell hasn't anyone built that?
I think it's the 5 whys.
Yeah.
Why. But then also another one I was going to add was get real comfortable with uncomfortable silences. The worst thing you can do is ask a question and someone just says yes or no, and then you fill in the blanks. Just keep quiet. It's not about you talking, it's about them talking, you listening, you taking notes. And all you want to do is try and get them to open up and engage in conversation. So if you have question 1 to 50 and they start with question 24, you start with question 24. You do not interrupt them, you just try and get them to flow where they're just sharing everything about this issue, problems. They start talking about their dog and puppy, don't worry about it, just keep them talking and engage. And just your job is to just try and highlight and get as many answers of what you're trying to achieve. But uncomfortable silence is brilliant. Eventually that void will be filled, and it shouldn't be filled by you, it should be filled by them.
It should definitely not be filled by yes or no questions. Fantastic. I've got time for a few more questions. Fintech or fintech startups. So there's a lot of talk about, fintech startups disrupting the banks and whatnot, but I mean, realistically, I don't see this happening. What I do see is fintech startups perhaps chipping away at individual sort of business models, like your, personal lending and whatnot. And I guess we're seeing some of the banks invest in startups that are playing in that space. What's your thoughts on the disruption of banking?
Yeah, look, I think it's no great secret. There's some great screenshots out there about, I think it was Barclays Capital, they did another one at the SAA, where every single tab and click option is being attacked by a startup. I think the benefits that startups have is that generally they're small teams of people that are solely dedicated to one core problem set, and they're survival dependent, so there's a lot of incentive. And also, because they're digital natives, they look at the online acquisition channels, they look at the retention, they look at the flow, and they have all that ownership within a small group of people. So decision making is quicker, testing is quicker, more iterative. It's actually a massive advantage compared to a bank, which may have organizational structures, different product lines, different initiatives, different groups. How many people are actually looking at that? So I think that's something I've actually brought up quite a bit, and we're still looking at how do we manage that. I think you're exactly right. I don't think one is absolutely going to blow out of the water. I find it very similar to the phase of group buying. A couple of years ago, where you have all these group buying starting, and eventually one buys another one, and so it turns out. I think the same will happen. You've got so many peer-to-peer lenders, and mobile lenders, and business lenders, invoice lenders now. Eventually, what happens is it will just be acquired, embedded, or something. People keep saying we haven't gone through a down cycle. I'm not an economist, but I feel like we're looking a little bit edgy at the moment. So I'm sure everyone's seen much growth in the next few years. So we'll see how those algorithms and methods come through. I've been personally a bit underwhelmed about the actual amount of tech in a lot of these startups. Some
They're called tech startups, but are they really?
Well, yeah, this is the thing. Like the algorithms they're using, they're not complicated. Like some of them that I've heard about, they literally just look at the speed at which you complete the form. That's one of the key major points of whether you're trustworthy or not. So I think we're definitely at a what's the word I'm looking for? Everyone's rising, like the sea level's rising. Everyone's rising. And you can get money pretty much from anything. But I think what the bank has to get comfortable with is the fact that we would always have quarterly objectives to increase sales, revenue at some point. I think what the bank has to get comfortable with, to your point, is a recent report by I think it was Forrester, one of those showing that literally 40% of margin is under attack. But that's more about just the cost reduction of services, right, in technologies, etc. And maybe 5% of that is by these new entrants. So I think it was total was 40%, it was 35% in margin, maybe 5%. So for us, I think what's going to become is that KPI incentives can more be aligned to not how can you get quarterly growth, how can you just keep what you got, and what do you have to spend potentially digitally or in other channels to keep those customers? How do you add more value? And I think that's the next conversation for a lot of our executives. So it's not just about whether it's product or service, is a new revenue line or saving us money, is it helping us keep our customers? And so I think the great thing about the startups is they have pushed the awareness of digital design, service, engagement, ease of use, mobility, all these things, and it's really great a lot of it. And if they hadn't done it, I think they'll be in a job.
Yeah, and I guess performance metrics, those KPIs you mentioned, are incredibly important to support. How do we keep our customers? How do we build new businesses, as opposed to those traditional efficiency metrics like return on assets, internal rate of return, which on their own they make a lot of sense and make perfect sense, but there is always a tendency then to fudge the way we invest in things because it's the denominator. So you want to invest in things that are short term and therefore bring up the efficiency and your targets. Whereas if you were to invest in something that may not generate a return for say 3-4 years, then hitting your efficiency metric target is a lot more difficult.
You're absolutely right. I think there's it's funny. A bank is a financial services product business. You create financial products. Product has a cost, has a rate, has a fee, has a opportunity. That is what a bank is stressed about. Any bank is that. We're now moving into digital entities. How do you track digital entities? It's a totally different scale. So I think that's going to happen, and you can see in the org structure, things are still very much aligned to product sets. But now what we're realizing is, that used to be marketed in the branch. What would that mean? It would be a pamphlet. Great, okay, cards going to do something, mortgage going to do something. But now we've got digital. Oh, hang on, that's one channel. So it's very interesting, and there'll be a lot of changes, I believe, in terms of how banks structure themselves and essentially respond to this. Because you're right, return on equity and use of that cash is still going to be the core number. But how that happens, how those different groups incentivize to keep focus on that, I think we'll see some big changes around there. And I think certain banks have done better than others.
I think we'll finish it with one final question related to an article we published recently on regulation. How do you innovate successfully when you operate in such a regulated environment? Being obviously AMLs and ASIC and APRA and whatnot. How do you innovate in that environment, and how do you apply lean startup philosophy and experimentation being conscientious that you're going to step on any watchdog tools?
Well, within NAB we have a regulatory affairs group, so their job is to interact with all of those institutions and so really it just comes out of conversations. Like, it's really not that hard. We have an experiment, it's looking to do X, Y, Z, we call them up, say, hey, that's what we're going to do, what do we need to do? In some instances, we highlight really interesting roadblocks, and then we just have a conversation about that. And at the end of the day, it's a risk. And either you're willing to take the risk or you're not.
Yeah.
So, bring it down to really core enough thing, that's what it is. It's just really outlining the opportunity, outlining the risk. Either you accept it or you don't. But it's interesting. We've also highlighted things that have happened in the bank just because they happened in the bank, and now we have to fix that. But what will happen is over time, as you deal with more and more instances, precedents will be set, opportunity risk will be mitigated, etc. And so again, it's another advantage for startups is they don't have that. It's funny because I don't know if you've seen, but some have wanted to be APRA or ASIC certified. Yeah. And ASIC, I think ASIC was saying, well, but we don't have anything. We don't have a certification for this. Like, you can't get certified. And they're like, but if we had it, it would make us feel so much more legitimate. It would give the consumer, more confidence. Yeah. Put the ASIC banner on there or something,
And I'm sure it was, as it was for us here at Collective Campus. Fantastic. Cool.
Great.
Awesome.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks. And we look forward to connecting again next time. Cheers.
1,000 songs. And it goes right in my pocket.
Failure of the future has to be a nation that is agile, that is innovative, that is creative.